Welcome to this explainer. Today, we're going to trace an absolutely fascinating upward journey of human healing. We're looking at how we actually process deep underlying pain. We'll start way down at the physical level, the literal shaking of trauma trapped in the body, and then move up into the symbolic realm of the mind, up again into ancient spiritual traditions, and finally, we'll see how we project all of that profound beauty outward into the world through the art of cinema. It's a lot to cover, but it is so incredibly connected. Let's dive right in. To set the stage for all of this, I want to share a really profound thought from the 13th century Sufi mystic Rumi. He said the wound is the place where the light enters you. Just let that sink in for a second. What if pain and fear aren't just, broken parts of ourselves or obstacles to get over? What if they're actually doorways to deep self-discovery? Keep that idea of the wound and the light in the back of your mind, because we're going to start our journey at the very foundation of where that wound lives. Phase 1. The body's trapped trauma. Let's look at how these emotional wounds actually take root. Okay, so here's the thing. Before trauma ever even becomes a conscious thought, it is a heavy physical weight sitting right there in our nervous system. To really understand this, we have to look at a groundbreaking approach called Somatic experiencing, or SE, created by Dr. Peter Levine. Now, traditional talk therapy is great, but it's mostly verbal. SE is totally different. It recognizes that humans actually suppress our instinctual animal responses to threats. Like, in the wild, an animal will literally shake or tremble to release massive stress after a predator attacks. But us humans, we bottle it up. And because we interrupt that natural fight-or-flight response, that traumatic energy just gets physically trapped in our bodies. So how do we actually fix this? Well, the SE methodology builds a path to healing using 3 main steps. First up is titration. That just means processing the trauma in tiny, bite-sized pieces so it doesn't totally overwhelm you. Second is pendulation. This is all about rhythm, gently swinging your attention back and forth between feeling distressed and feeling calm. And finally, discharge. This is the big one. It's where your body finally gets to complete that interrupted survival response. Maybe it's physical shaking, maybe it's a deep, heavy sigh, but it actually releases that trapped energy. And when a traumatized nervous system fractures like that, we really do feel split and fragmented inside. But as we start to discharge that physical tension, we can finally transition inward, moving away from just the physical body and stepping into the psychological realm.
Which brings us to phase 2, unlocking the unconscious mind.
This is where those unresolved physical fears we just talked about start bubbling up symbolically, mostly in our dreams and unconscious narratives. Carl Jung had this great way of looking at it. He viewed the mind kind of like a giant iceberg, where our conscious, waking life is just the very tip sticking out of the water. He believed dreams act like icebergs rising from the deep, and their whole job is to compensate for our conscious blind spots, basically helping us round out our fractured personalities into one whole piece. In Jungian depth psychology, this relies heavily on what he called the uniting symbol. And honestly, our dreams do a ton of heavy lifting here. They're retrospective, meaning they help process past trauma. They're integrative, helping us make sense of conflicting feelings. But beautifully, they're also prospective. They literally anticipate the person we have the potential to become. Jung called this union of the conscious and unconscious the transcendent function. It's this incredible inner intelligence that can turn long-term misery into a totally renewed sense of purpose. Let's make this practical. Think of a lingering fear you have right now. How do you actively work with it? Jung developed an amazing technique for this, called active imagination. It's an exercise to gently confront fear in your mind. Step 1, you identify the fear, but you don't fight it and you don't run from it. Step 2, you invite it to take on a symbolic shape. Maybe it's a character, an object, a shadow. And step 3, you literally just ask it, what do you represent? By speaking to the fear without aggression, it completely loses its overwhelming energy. Actually, scratch that. It doesn't just lose its energy, it turns into a guide for the work you need to do. Moving on up to phase 3, healing the spiritual heart. Okay, so we've covered the body and the mind. Now let's elevate things even further and see how ancient spiritual traditions give us this profound framework for healing. Look at this comparison. On the left, modern cognitive restructuring, a total staple of Western therapy today. On the right, the 9th century Muslim scholar Abu Zayd al-Balkhi. He was using what he called psychological first aid to counter irrational fears with positive truths. The guy was doing cognitive behavioral therapy 1,000 years before the West. It's wild, right? And it perfectly proves that these ancient and modern systems are speaking the exact same language. And within Islamic mysticism, or Sufism, we find incredibly practical somatic tools as well. A perfect example is dhikr, which is this beautiful, rhythmic chanting of God's names. When they combine this with specific breathwork, like slowly exhaling to the phrase La ilaha illallah, it directly engages the parasympathetic nervous system. Remember somatic experiencing from earlier? This ancient chanting is literally breathing peace directly into the physical grip of trauma, calming that fight or flight response and quieting the ego all at the same time. And the philosophy underneath all of this is it's so empowering. Islamic psychology holds that beneath the mess of our trauma, every single person has this untouched, pure inner core called the fitra. Trauma absolutely disturbs the ego, the nafs, but that spiritual inner sanctum, it can never be destroyed. Going back to our Rumi quote, trauma is actually the catalyst. It breaks down the false ego to unearth this indestructible, pure treasure hidden inside the spiritual heart. All right, let's pivot to phase 4, sculpting the sacred cinematic. So, we heal inwardly, right? But as humans, we also project that search for meaning outward into the world. And to understand how we do that through the art of film, we need to talk about a concept called the numinous. Now, the numinous isn't just a religious term. It's an experiential intensity. It's this sacred force vibrating in everyday matter, in memory, in time. It's that sudden, overwhelming sense of awe that you literally can't put into words. In our crazy, hyper-fast attention economy, visionary filmmakers like Andrei Tarkovsky use the numinous as a core motif. They intentionally slow down the image to force us into a deep, spiritual meditation. We absolutely see this pursuit in the work of modern director Terrence Malick, too. Look at how he just breaks all the classical rules of cinema. No rigid screenplays. He prefers actors to use poetic inspiration. His cinematographer, Emmanuel Lubezki, uses this roaming, restless camera to just hunt for unscripted magic out in natural light. And Malick basically sculpts time in the editing room, treating scenes more like a fluid musical melody than a standard plot. He is using cinema to visually hunt for spiritual grace, which echoes Tarkovsky's own thoughts on visual poetry perfectly. He said, "The image is indivisible and elusive. It stretches out to infinity and leads to the absolute." Tarkovsky's films don't rush to give you answers. They demand slowness. They ask you to stop, to actually look at water, at fire, at the earth, and experience the sacredness of time itself. It's really the ultimate visual manifestation of the internal healing we've been tracking this whole time. Which brings us to our final stop, phase 5, integrating the numinous self. Listen, if you take absolutely nothing else away from this explainer, let it be this golden thread connecting all of it, the physical discharge of a shaking body, Jung's uniting symbol rising from the unconscious, the rhythmic breathing of Sufi dhikr, and Terrence Malick's cinematic pursuit of grace. These are not separate, isolated things. They are simply different languages humanity uses to describe the exact same phenomenon, our desperate universal search for wholeness. So here's the bottom line. True healing? It's never just about forgetting a painful event or trying to go back to who you were before it happened. No way. It is an upward, dynamic journey. It's about transforming through the pain. It's about taking the very grounded, physical reality of your nervous system and fully integrating it with the expansive, mysterious light of your soul. So as you step out on your own journey toward the numinous, I want to leave you with this one thought. What will you find when you finally stop running, look your deepest fear right in the eye, and gently ask, "What do you represent?" Thanks so much for joining me on this explainer. Until next time, keep learning, keep growing, and definitely keep searching for the light in the wound.